Mike Madrid, co-founder of the Lincoln Project and a political consultant who has worked on both sides of the aisle. He also is the author of The Latino Century, How America's Largest Minority is Transforming Democracy. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. President Biden was out courting Latino voters today and announcing new programs aimed at benefiting Latino voters. But you're right that both parties continue to fail to appeal to the Latino vote. What are they getting wrong?
Well, the main thing that both parties don't understand is that Latinos as a voting group are moving decisively away from sort of a racial and ethnic focused voting group to one that is significantly more economically and pocketbook focused. And it's really challenging both parties' notion of what a minority voter actually is. The same dynamic that the previous speaker was talking about African American men specifically, is happening with Latinos, but by a factor of about 3 or 4 times greater and 3 or 4 times faster. About a decades-long run of elections has seen more and more Latinos voting for Republicans or moving away from the Democratic Party, so much so that Democrats now sit in a historically weakened position with Latinos in July heading into an election year.
And what can you tell us about the shift you've seen Latinos voters make away from the Democratic Party?
I think the best way to look at it is less of a shift that you're seeing with African American voters and more of an emergence of a new voting bloc because they don't have that vote history. Nearly 40% of Latinos are under the age of 30 years old, which is a jaw-dropping statistic that tells us that the problems with Democrats having with young voters are a concentric circle that overlaps considerably with Latino voters because they're essentially one and the same. But that same anti-political party, anti-establishment populist sentiment is just as strong amongst Latino voters, I would argue perhaps stronger than it is with African American men. And as the working class becomes less white and much more brown, those Latino voters are starting to take on the political behaviors and the voting tendencies of the white, rural, non-college educated voter that has so perplexed this country over the course of the past 8 years.
And I just want to point to Peter Navarro, who has caused a big eruption here in the arena, who just actually was released from a low-security prison today and came right to speak at the Republican National Convention today. Sorry for that interruption, but you can hear the eruption of fight, 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 and people throwing their fists in the air. You're right that Joe Biden could easily bring Latinos back into the traditional range for Democrats after a decade-long slide. How?
I think you'd have to absolutely create a Marshall Plan for housing. This is a community where 1 in 5 Hispanic men are employed in the construction industry or a related field. This is an industry that has been hammered by a tripling of interest rates during his term, a devaluation of the currency by about 20%. Affordability is the real economic problem facing lower income working class people. So while the fundamentals, the stock market, the S&P 500 are showing record gains, and people in upper middle class and upper class economies and industries are doing quite well, the lower class is really struggling with affordability questions, and that disproportionately means brown and black faces, Latinos specifically, as those numbers start to explode in the workforce.
And Mike Madrid, we thank you so much for the conversation and your time. Really appreciate it.